marks for class participation. So then I wanted to list here the, what do you call it, how the academic assessment for the coursework would be. So you have for Cut 1, 10 marks. Cut 2, 10 marks. Then group report or presentation, 8 marks. Then another group assignment. Oh, 7 marks. And then for the class participation, 5 marks. That makes it 40 in total. Okay? 10, 10, 35 plus 7, plus 5, 40. And then exam will be 60 as usual. Okay. So yeah, I thought it would be good to consider the class participation because we have a lot of what do you call it, breakout rooms, class discussion. So I think it's just right to acknowledge, to give marks for the class participation. Okay, so last week, what did we talk about? We talked about pillars. Okay, the reason for I think for the interest in corporate governance, what corporate governance is, how does it benefit the organization, how can organization benefit from good governance. Any answer? I think you remember. You don't remember. What are the advantages of good governance? Aha, very good. Facilitate effective functioning of the board, increases investor confidence, improve performance. Okay, very good. And what about the pillars of corporate governance? There is no as such common ground when it comes to theoretical aspect of corporate governance, the theories that as such support. But when it comes to, I mean, that's thinking of corporate governance all around the world because it varies the culture, the political situation, the laws of the different countries. So people have, yes, people have to adapt to the context where they are in. But then, at least there is agreement on the core concept, no core values, pillars as such of corporate governance, and these are integrity, accountability, transparency, responsibility. Other people add other values such as efficiency, effectiveness, and many others. No? But these four are key. Yes. What else? Yeah, okay. So I think apart from that, I see here shareholders, board directors, executives. Okay, these are the main, the inner circle, so to speak, when it comes to stakeholders or the key players in the corporation. Shareholders, board directors, executives. Although directly as such, it's the board directors who oversee the work of the executives, and somehow the shareholders are kind of external. But of course, the board of directors represent the shareholders, so they represent the interest of the shareholders. We talked about uh, two theories last week. The report of Group 1. Okay, steward steward theory and agent theory, or yeah, stewardship or agency theory. Okay, so meanwhile, I don't know if everyone has come. I'd just like to run a poll.
It's pretty fire. Let's listen to it again.
Just looking at these two theories, no, to analyze it a little bit more, and then just to add another theory before Group 1, before Jaden and his group continues with their report. I just want to highlight some things on stewardship and agency theory. But before that, I'd like, having heard these people, uh, Jaden and his group, I'd like to get the opinion of the members of the class, of everyone in the class. If you were to design the governance mechanisms, on which theory would you base, no, the principal and agent relationship? So I'd like you just to answer this, Paul. Very basic. I just want somehow to get an idea which of the two do you support, or at least you think a little bit, remembering what those theories are about. We'll look at it also now, but just before that, let us run these. I keep admitting and readmitting. So the teacher has to be alert all the time. Okay, just to get ideas, your thoughts, no, on these.
Yeah, pardon? I'm in class and I'm going to present.
Think at least for the percentage to reach at least 80 people, 80% rather, 80 people. Okay, so this is the result. Okay. So at least it's interesting to know that some of you thinks of stewardship theory. At least believe on the importance of trusting people. Okay, 43%, 55% and 45%. So stewardship as one. Now, let me see. Problem is that my PowerPoint, I don't know what happens with. Okay, just to give an overview and to analyze and critique a little bit these two theories, because it's very interesting how to distinguish them and to know really which way to follow, so to speak. Well, actually, uh, I don't know. Personally, I would follow stewardship theory, but it's good to analyze, no, to analyze. So we'll look a little bit at these uh, agency theory and stewardship theory. Okay, they have been explained to us very well last week. I just want to add this transaction cost economics theory, and then Jane then and his team, group one, will proceed. Will continue with stakeholder and shareholder theory. Uh, So, okay, we have learned no, that with agent theory or agency theory, there is an agency relationship whereby one delegates some work to another, and that means one has to like represent another to do the task of someone. Someone has been given a fiduciary duty, but then the theory postulates that in this kind of relationship, the agency relationship, there is incongruence of interest. That the agent is not, I mean, the interest of the agent is not aligned with the one of the principal because of what? Because he's self-interested, and because of his position, there is information asymmetry, and that the principal doesn't know as much as the agent because he's the one who is directly involved in the operation, and that the relationship of this agency is based on suspicion or mistrust. Then we were explained that this relationship implies cost of monitoring cost, bonding cost, and residual cost or loss. And the stewardship theory now indicates, teaches that directors are stewards, and this means that they are empowered. The managers or directors are empowered with autonomy to make executive decisions, whereas in agent theory, they are not empowered. They are monitored. They are treated with suspicion. So then the powers are restricted, and they are followed up and checked and monitored. But in the stewardship theory, the agent, because there is also agency in this, the managers or the directors representing the shareholders act as agents too, and that this theory postulates that the agent is predisposed to congruity of goals. The his goals are in agreement with that of the principal, is aligned, and then this agency is based on trust, so much so that uh, as a consequence, the CEO plays a dual role of chairmanship, of being a chairman and a CEO, chairman of the board and CEO of the corporation, the company as such. So these theories can also be traced from Douglas McGregor's X and Y theory that has to do with work motivation and management um, theories, no, explaining how workers are motivated, or how to handle or to manage people in the workplace. So theory X says that people dislike work and that they need close supervision. Also, that means they cannot be trusted. They will avoid work when possible, and they will avoid responsibility. That they desire only money, and people must be pushed to perform. So theory Y, on the other hand, is very much like stewardship theory, because people are motivated by self-fulfillment, and they have to perform, not necessarily they don't have to be pushed. They want independence in work, and they seek responsibility, and they naturally want to work. So somehow trace, we can see these similarities in these theories. Then there is an article, a journal article, but by Jens Grundy, I think he's Austrian, on this that fits very much with the study of our agency theory and steward theory. The title is "Are Managers Agents or Stewards of Their Principles? Logic, Critique, and Reconciliation of Two Conflicting Theories of Corporate Governance." So now he contrasts these two theories, looking at different criteria, no? On the theoretical basis, the agency theory being linked to stockholder theory or shareholder theory. The basis is very much on economics, no? Whereas stewardship theory, it's more on psychology and sociology, organizational psychology. So it follows more on the relationship between management and the agents, no, the rather the employees, because that can also be, no, that agency scenario can be in any situation where someone acts on behalf of another, or someone acts as an agent or a representative of another, acts on behalf of another. Now, in terms of performance criterion, the interest, they perform for the interest of the shareholder value, whereas the stewards work towards, rather, for the interest of stakeholder value from the interests of the company. And then, in terms of owner-manager relationship, there's a goal conflict, this incongruity of goals. We are not in agreement. Whereas the theory of under
Yeah.
stewardship theory, there is goal alignment. And then model of man as an economic man, the agent is an opportunist, no? An individual would like to benefit himself, whereas the stewardship theory speaks of the agent being pro-organizational benefit, no? More on promoting what is good for the organization. And then in terms of motivation, managerial motivation, what is the motivation of the agent? Is it extrinsic or intrinsic motives or intrinsic motives? Extrinsic motives have to do with monetary benefits, perks, um, perquisites, as you are going to see later in the report of Group 2. And intrinsic motivation, actually, my study in my master's degree has to do with this, no? Intrinsic motivation and organizational citizenship behavior as as predictors of employee performance. Because I do human resource, although I am an accountant by profession. But anyway, I wanted to share with you this. Actually, even before seeing this article, I was already thinking about the stewardship theory as something that relates to intrinsic motivation. Now, intrinsic motivation is a motivation from within the individual. No, it is derived from one's work, the joy and the self fulfillment that one finds, no one has when doing the work. No? So that you are not motivated by money. You are motivated by the need for competence, or the sense of belonging, sense of fulfillment, the enjoyment that you have as you fulfill your work. You are enjoying your work. You like it. You love it, and that in itself is a motivation, not the money. Money is a consequence. What inspires one to work is that I find a family here. I have a sense of belonging. I'm part of the group, and I am exercising and showing my capacity, my competence. I'm being trained, I'm being developed. I am developing my skills. I'm becoming a better professional. And I am happy. I'm happy in my work, at my work. So that fits into this stewardship, because the idea of that the trust, or the study that I did interviewing some employees, no, says that because they see and they feel that they are trusted, it inspires them to be loyal, to be committed, to work hard for the company to repay that trust, no, that they have been given, and that inspires in them confidence, a sense of belonging, being self-fulfilled in their work. So they are so happy to work well and to work hard, doing extra things, knowing that they belong, and the job becomes theirs. The company is a sense of ownership because of that intrinsic motivation. Somehow it fits into this stewardship theory, because that is the you can see that the agent is aligned with the interest of the organization, of the company, of the principal. So the general approach to uncertainty about managerial behavior, so there is distrust here, and they avoid issues. They don't like as such confrontation, but there is suspicion and mistrust. Whereas here there is trust and acceptance, of people. There is confidence in people. And then when it comes to representative design and recommendations, while the governance structure as such, no? So the here monitoring is the primary role of the board, and there is presence of independence of directors. There is, okay, don't know whether we are going to see that today, maybe not, because the ones reporting on board of directors, I think they are not ready today. So, but anyway, there is independence in that, okay, there is separation of because of uh, information asymmetry, but also there is the presence of independent directors in order to monitor independent directors, outside directors with no involvement as such in the operations of the business. They're called outside independent directors or non-executive directors. Okay, then of course they are given incentives, and then the decisions are shared. Whereas in stewardship theory, the the primary role of the board is advisory, not to give advice. It's not so much to monitor. And the management is given a lot of discretion on making decisions. Even though they don't need to be given so many extra benefits, because here they are given a fixed salary, but they're happy. Let us assume that this fixed salary is competitive enough, no, to really keep them in the job. So yeah, they give a clearer picture of the differences or the contrast between the two. So then the is the let's analyze it a little bit more, because okay, because of the mistrust, no, in the dealings, no, that the agent is not trusted. So we can say that what happens if that description of the agent not being capable of not worthy of trust, uh, is not does not actually fit him, no, that opportunist assumption that he is not actually an opportunist, so we are not giving him that opportunity, to prove himself. So in essentially the manager or the agent is construed to be incapable of loyalty, to be unworthy of trust. And that also, from the ethical perspective, from the point of view of man's freedom, we are just assuming, that the man is not able. I mean, the guy is bad. Okay, the guy is bad because then you need to monitor him, and he cannot be trusted. So it means that morality can only be enforced from outside, external to the agent. So it denies man's capacity to choose what is good, that he is capable of good, of doing good. He doesn't need to, okay, to work so hard to prove that. You will see it, first see it, no? So a control-oriented governance systems as such are no guarantee for forestalling of inappropriate managerial or management behavior, because we have seen that there are instances like all these the cases we studied, even the case of Enron and WorldCom, they have appropriate internal controls, but then still they were not guarantee for them to, oh, they were not good enough, they were not sufficient, they were not adequate to prevent them from doing those things. So basically, that's it is good to ask, no, to
Yeah,
to 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 assess,
you
no,
come over
to
here.
critique, to analyze.
You come
Really,
here.
is it effective? Is it useful? Does it really benefit the organization? But then again, in terms of stewardship theory, all those other things are good, but management is unchallenged. If the agent is so trusted that there is cohesion between the managers and the directors and the shareholders. So now you just believe everything that he said. That can also be dangerous. No? If a relationship is entirely built on trust, goal alignment, and cooperation, cohesion may become so strong that it prevents warranted critique of management course of strategy. They are not analyzed or evaluated, which is important. So blind trust could also be a misplaced strategy. So they ought not to do away with systems of internal control, even though there is a climate of trust. So it should not be forgotten, no, that to put the measures of prudence and fairness, they need to be in place. Okay. So now this article uh, talks of in analyzing what would be the best. No, there were authors who suggested that there should be a modified view of economic model of man that is called that is said to be REM. No, that man is resourceful, evaluative, maximizing. This model, no, maximizing model of human agency, to assume that the human person, man, cares about almost everything, not only money, and that man is the agent is ready to substitute some goods for others. But then again, still, each individual wants are unlimited. More is better. So then each individual is a maximizer and that the individual is resourceful. Looking at all this, they also realize that in actual fact, with all the goodwill, no, with all the efforts to find some balance, even this proposition is still not sufficient, it's not still adequate because it doesn't actually depart from the original agency premise of um, of self-interested agent, no? And there's still the moral hazard. No? Moral hazard remains a challenge. No, that still he can still be an opportunist by the fact that his wants unlimited and that each individual really wants to get as much as possible for oneself, although he is very resourceful. So they were suggesting to find balance between agency theory and stewardship theory. That actually what should govern the relationship between the agent and the principal and agent is informed behavioral assumption. You know, informed behavioral assumption for designing an effective governance system. That's strong. You can't assume that the agent cannot be trusted until he has proven himself uh, not trustworthy. I know that some of you were saying, someone wrote in the chat last week, no, guilty until proven otherwise. No, innocent until proven guilty should be, because we are capable of doing good. So there has to be informed behavioral assumption. So what does that mean? That in actual fact, there should be regular evaluation, regular review of governance mechanism to actually look from time to time on the evaluate the actual extent of power, no? The actual extent power of the manager or the CEO is what's the current situation, no? Is he going overboard? To review that every now and then, no? To audit it, and then also to audit review existing incentive systems to determine the effectiveness of the control system rather than simply assuming the opportunism, no, opportunistic position of the agent. So that in actual fact, behavior is subject to investigation and analysis, not not of outright, um, conclusion that it's conclusive that the agent cannot be trusted, and therefore we need to do all these. So it should be given that a given that evaluation process, when it is effective, can actually unearth areas of improvement. So, and that will be the basis of informed behavioral assumption, not so much assuming that the agent is guilty straight away. So a combined distrust and trust governance structure on varied design dimensions with the aim of achieving interdimensional balance would be the best. But of course, it remains to be a very interesting, curious topic, for researchers. So then it's this one, to find a balance, and that balance can be achieved by regular evaluation, regular review, analysis, audit of the governance mechanisms. Okay, then I wanted to just mention a little bit. I mean, this transaction cost theory, which is related to agency theory. The theory views the firm itself as a governance structure. So it is important to choose the appropriate governance structure, which will be instrumental, which will be helpful to aligning goal incongruity between directors, managers, and shareholders. So it is close to, rather, it's linked to agency theory, that the transaction cost economic theory uh, perceives, the firm as such as a structure, a setup, a governance system, and that agency theory, on the other hand, is a nexus of contracts, meaning that you need to keep making contracts, to keep aligning the interest of the agent, whereas in the transaction cost theory, it is the governance structures that help, to align the incongruity of goals. So what happens? They explain these people responsible for this theory, or rather that promote this theory, explains that the growth of the firm brings the need to raise more capital from the capital markets, and this results to a wider shareholder base. But then, because the company grows bigger and bigger, as we saw in the beginning, how cooperation came about, then now began, arose the separation of ownership and control. That owners were different from the ones who are in direct control of the company, and that's why, okay, there's the link of the agency theory between, connection between transaction cost and agency theory. So now this gentleman, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Koas. So the firm, according to him, following this idea of the firm growing bigger and bigger for different reasons, technological advances, uh, just economy of scale, benefiting from economy of scale, becoming a monopoly, this kind of whatever, for whatever reason. So the firm gains economic benefits, while growing, when it undertakes some operations within the company in-house. And as operations continues to grow bigger in scale, there are some transactions that may be done internally. But as it continues to expand, it sorry, I repeated this one here. What happens is, the cycle now repeats itself. That because the company has become bigger and bigger, it is now becoming less efficient. So then it becomes useful again to do things externally, sending them to the market to um, outsource the operation. So this gentleman, Williamson, said that, um, the cost of any misaligned actions may be reduced. Okay, with what happens with all these operations being in-house and being outsourced, okay, there's still the agency there, agency relationship that is, because the separation of powers and control is somehow is very much present there. So the cost of any misaligned actions may be reduced by wise choice, no? Sound judgment on corporate on governance structure, rather than merely aligning incentives and pricing them out, rather than just making the benefits more and more hefty and making them really competitive. Well, look at the governance structures. So there is transaction cost benefit, no? When you process, no, the different, okay, whatever it is, maybe manufacturing process, or just different transactions, operations in-house, and also when it's outsourced, there is economic gain there. So in the way that the governance structures is managed, is taken advantage of, there is economic benefit. So another gentleman by the name Hart said that the writing of contracts, talking of the nexus of contracts, the writing of contracts between the principal and agent implies cost. Is cost of negotiation between parties, providing for eventualities, making the contracts legally sound and valid. But then, as such, the contract needs to be developed every time because there are relevant issues that may have been forgotten, that may arise in the course of the period of the contract. There may have been omissions that are detected later. So then he says that the governance structure can serve as mechanism for filling and sorting out the gaps. So that's why this transaction cost economic theory lies, or rather gives importance to a sound choice, no, the choice of appropriate governance structures, and that benefits the organization economically. Now, these authors point out that both theories of transaction cost and agency are concerned with managerial discretion. Now, they assume that managers are given to opportunism. They are self-interested. Actually, I think it is normal, no, to be self-interested. It's still within the normal, but when you become selfish, that your interest is solely focused on you and you disregard the interest of others, and that's when it becomes problematic. So anyway, they say that these theories are, I mean, take into account that there are moral hazards, no, that the agents will act for their own benefit, and that managers operate under bounded rationality, meaning that they only look for the most suitable solution of given the present situation, but they don't really take the trouble to look for the best solution for the interest of the principal. So both agency theory and TCE, transaction cost economics, regard the board of directors as instrument of control. And in this context, bounded rationality means that managers will tend to satisfy. No? That's just not to just get by, no? Whatever is the available solution without having to look for the best really, rather than maximize profits. And of course, this is not for the interest of the shareholders. So I think now we can give the floor to what do you call him, Jaden. But I think if you don't mind, can we have lunch. And we go for lunch. And then Jaden and group one, well, can continue. Is that all right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes, please.
Been considered right. Next slide. So who's a shareholder? A shareholder is anyone in an institution that owns shares or stock in a public or private corporation, and the members of the company have financial interests and for the organization of the project to be profitable. So a shareholder is anyone whose interest is for the company to be profitable so that they're able to get the financial returns from the organizations in question. Next slide. So the shareholder theory, which was originally proposed by Milton believed that if businesses are not doing are engaging in other responsibilities apart from maximizing profits, it wasn't considered a right way to do business. So Milton believed that businesses do not have any other obligation at all other than to maximize profits. It is a traditional theory which forced corporations to return the maximum possible returns to the shareholders, who are the people buying shares in the companies. In cases where these companies do engage in other things apart from getting profits or making money, they could be removed from the board of directors, or even these shareholders would consider selling the shares they do hold in the companies. Next slide. In some cases, the shareholders would expect these companies and organizations to even consider CSR as an economic profit-making deal. So if as far as the CSR is not adding to the company's revenues or profits, it wouldn't be allowed. And because they believed that whenever this theory is done within the constraints of law, so no law is broken, there's no deception, there's no fraud, it will become beneficial to the society as a whole. This is because if the company is making sure that the profits are more, they're able to pay people in a better way. They're able to make more money. That means they have the best services, and therefore, even if it's CSR, unless it is in economic profit-making terms, it couldn't be allowed. But then it had a negative effect, which led to the demise of corporations such as Enron and WorldCom. Specifically, WorldCom, the CEOs were forced to shuffle their books, and they reported a revenue of $3 billion with a reported $1.4 billion profit instead of a loss, which eventually led to the collapse, and they registered one of the biggest bankruptcy in American history. So this is because the CEOs and the workers are forced to make as much profit, and in cases where they are not making these big profit margins, the shareholders force them to resign or to even sell their shares. So as a CEO, these CEOs even go as far as shuffling their books just to make sure that the shareholders have the view that the company is making the most profit possible. I'll leave Kari to discuss the motive for adoption and the morality of the shareholder theory.
Sorry, remind me your name. I missed.
I'm Innocent. There's Kari.
Innocent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll be taking you through the motive for adoption and why. So here, selfish businesses actually promote the overall well-being. So here, a business acting purely out of self-interest will end up promoting the overall well-being of the community around them. For example, businesses have self-interested reasons to not harm others. Since a business which mistreats its employees or is rude to customers or sells them harmful, defective products is a business that's unlikely to do very well. But businesses might even have further reasons to benefit others around them, since a business that improves the local community is more likely to attract better employees from around the country and more customers to the area. This thesis is known as the invisible hand argument, since it proposes that some invisible hand will guide even a completely unregulated market for the betterment of the society as a whole. So the next point is business people are not moral authorities. So from this point, some suggest that the social responsibilities we have in mind are moral issues, but business people are not moral authorities. Since business people have not really studied ethics in detail, cannot rely on them to make sound moral decisions about what they should and or should not do. Additionally, if we force businesses to start enforcing morality, this power of moral authority will inevitably be abused by those who seek profits, and these selfish moral values will eventually be imposed upon society. Lastly, we have laws and legal measures are the government's job. So here, businesses are out for profits and profit alone, and they will pursue profit by any legal means that they can. So if there's something we think that a business should or should not do, the government should make a law to enforce it. But the business itself should not be responsible for enforcing rules upon itself. Yeah.
Sorry, Kari.
Yeah.
How did you explain this business people actually promote overall well-being? Could you just repeat?
So a business acts purely out of self-interest and only end up promoting the overall well-being of the community around them, basically.
Is there are they aware of that? Do they do it on purpose or just, I suppose, as a consequence? No. So eventually, if they are doing business, they are doing well. They can promote this overall being. Is whose well-being is it? Themselves or everyone?
Everyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
So before you go to the next slide, I'd like people to comment or critique. They said that this line that says business people are not moral authorities. Therefore, they are not expected to make their business from any moral perspective. Is that Kari, what you meant by this?
Yes.
Okay. Can people comment on this? Is the statement true? And is there anything wrong with it? Rebecca.
I beg to differ because I think that you have to be moral in like the businesses you do. Like for instance, that's why some businesses are illegal. Like you can't sell people's organs illegally, or you can't sell cocaine illegally. I feel like business people are definitely not moral authorities. They should have some level of ethics and really and selfish businesses don't promote overall well-being. For instance, like some businesses use child labor to produce their products, which isn't overall well-being. Yeah, that's my thought.
Very good, Rebecca. Very good input. Yes, that they do not really promote well-being by their if their interests are selfish, and also if their businesses are in themselves wrong, no, or evil. There is an interesting point here from Julie and Victor. Yeah. Victor says, as business person, you cannot separate morality from business, but the individuals who run them. yes, they are moral authorities, but they ought to conduct the business ethically. Yeah, actually, I meant to highlight that point, no, that Victor was said here. Business people are not moral authorities, but they are moral persons. They are, as Victor said, you cannot separate them. Okay, Nicolaus is putting making us here do a debate, which is very good. A very high degree, I would think it's true. Sure, there is some morals that are expected. However, it can be wrong to assume there'll be angels to avoid achieving their goals. You be careful of Nicholas. Don't do business with him. He says that there'll not be angels to achieve their goals. This is a very shareholder perspective. In order to make money, I will not be an angel. You will not be an angel, but Julie is saying that you need to have some ethics. Okay? I want to point out. Okay, sorry. Okay, let me answer this first. Sorry, I'm reading a message here that it's a bit okay. Now, uh, I got a bit lost. Okay, so business people, I think here is it's good to if you have not read that what Victor has said here. As a business person, you cannot separate morality from business or the individuals who run them. You know, you've learned your principles of ethics, philosophical anthropology, and some of you have done business ethics. Who is the one doing business? No, it's the individual. You cannot separate the individual who is doing the business from the business because the one who is doing the act, the one who is doing the free act, is the person whose actions are subject to morality. That's why you keep saying that they do the business, but they need some morality in what they do. Okay, and some businesses by themselves in themselves because of the evil nature of their business operations or the products themselves, the service and the products they produce or they sell make their business unethical, illegal or unethical from the moral standpoint. So they are not moral authorities, but their actions are subject to morality. You know, the act is not hanging there, no? It's the human act. It's the person acting. And that act that you have done when you are cheating, is not, hanging over there that someone else has done it. It is you. And our behavior, our actions have an effect, have repercussions on ourselves to begin with, and then all the stakeholders, all those who form part of that business in and society at large. So you cannot wash your hands saying, I'm doing my job, no? I'm doing your business, whether you like it or not. Okay, we are going to see later, there is the legitimacy theory that says that the opportunity, the actual doing of the business has been kind of legitimized, no, kind of approved by the society, yeah, by the people, the society where the business operates. So then the business has to perform in accord with the conditions, so to speak, of the society, for the good of the society. It's a very difficult issue, no, because it's been like that as you discuss to argue uh, stakeholders theory and stockholders theory, but in the end it boils down to the value of the individual. Okay, Gabriel says that they are not only moral actors, They are actually moral authorities, no? Moral actors, but they're even authority on the issue because of the influence that that it has on a larger scale, no? On the impact it has on society. Yeah, well, business could have more moral control than individuals, but at the end of the day, they're still subject to ethics. Yeah, they are subject to ethics because you remember we defined corporation as legal persons, no fictitious, a legal fictitious, a legal fiction, a legal person, legal entity. They act as persons and they are represented by persons. So they are subject to morality. They have a responsibility to society. They're able to respond. They are accountable for their actions. Okay, so it's very hard to tell people, especially when they are only focused on profit and they don't care what else, what are the repercussions of their on others, so long as they make money, and that is Milton Friedman. Okay, Magnus here is. However, business find ways to hide illegal activities. A known furniture brand preaches about environmental conservation, yet they buy trees that are illegally acquired from countries like Siberia. Yeah, IKEA, whatever the
Roger,
name, is very famous.
how's
In
it
fact,
going?
they have sometimes they are used as models of ethical
Just up?
organization. So I am surprised to hear this,
Okay.
to see this, no? But all the same, yeah, it's true that they hide their illegal activities. But it always comes out to the open sooner or later. You cannot hide things forever. Okay, that was good input from everyone. Innocent. Oh, sorry, who was there?
Hello.
Kari, you may continue.
So I'll be taking you through the next topic for stakeholder theory.
And that is who is that?
This is Jaden.
Jaden. Okay.
Yeah. So I'll first go ahead and define what a stakeholder is. So a stakeholder is any individual or group that will be actively impacted by the outcome of a project. And in so they have a influence on the proceedings of the project. So a stakeholder is any active party who will be affected by the. Okay, by active I mean that they have a direct influence onto the project, and they have an active stake into how whether the project is going to fail or succeed. So it's important for the managers to prioritize the interests of the most important stakeholders. So what is stakeholder theory now that you know what a stakeholder is? A stakeholder theory is a view of capitalism which addresses business ethics, morals, and values when managing stakeholders involved with a project or organization. It seeks to optimize relations with stakeholders, thereby improving efficiencies throughout the project or organization. So, in short, it just says that all these entities, all these stakeholders have relationships among them that have to be managed so that the business or that the project can go ahead and succeed. So, I will then take you through the history of stakeholder theory. It was first Okay, on this slide you can see it's 1984 by Edward Freeman, but later through some research later on I was able to find out that there's actually an earlier publication by another person called Ian Mitroff in 1983 that led
Mhm,
to this book over here by Edward Freeman. So he's a
mhm,
progenitor of this theory. So
mhm,
it's the book is called Stakeholders of the Organizational Mind, which Edward Freeman then followed up with an article before writing his own book, which is now called
mhm,
Strategic Management and a Stakeholders Approach. So the
mhm,
evolution of this stakeholders theory, it's been used as a key consideration during the research of ethics, and it has served as a platform for further study. So that is stakeholder theory. I would like to invite Daniel to go through stakeholders in the next slides.
Okay. So basically, stakeholders are people who have some relation to a company. So just imagine, like, I want to take an example of, let's say, a supermarket like Tuskys, because they had a recent scandal. So you can imagine the supermarket, the company is at the center, and then stakeholders are people who have any relation or ties to the company. So in Tusky's case, their suppliers, the people who bring products, are are stakeholders, customers, people who go to buy goods, are stakeholders, the community, basically people who live around and benefit from the supermarket being there. So you can imagine, if somebody sets a business that's next to a supermarket, they're likely to get more traffic. And then government, because the company has to pay taxes, and then employees, because they get their salary from the supermarket, and shareholders, these are people who have invested money in the company. Next slide. Yeah. So Friedman came up with a means of forming your own uh, embodiment of the stakeholder theory, which is called a normative core. So what you're supposed to do is use these two statements. So a corporation is ought to be governed, and you fill it with something, and then managers ought to act to something. So take an example of an environmental organization or NGO or something. You'd say our corporation ought to be governed in accordance with the principles of caring for the earth. And then for your managers, you would say our managers ought to act to care for the earth. Yeah. So we could go to the next. So the flaws that other theories usually have, or prior businesses have, is they're majorly profit driven, and most justification for this is that some people believe in, Adam Smith's theory of wealth of nations, where if everybody is acting according to their own self-interest, then you will have change. So you will progress, all of you. So a lot of companies now are majorly profit driven, just to get money from customers and not to add value. The second flaw with other theories is they're not too focused on business and ethics considerations, and they take it lightly, because we all have this mentality that business is a cutthroat business. If you don't act ethically, your business will fail. So people tend to take shortcuts. And then another flaw the stakeholder theory addresses is that people are not simple beings of self-interest. That goes back to the theory of the Adam Smith's theory, where if you cannot just assume that a business will essentially work in its own self-interest in terms of generating profit. They may have ulterior motives, such as, businesses that do money laundering, or if a person as a manager decides to take money out of the bank and, corrupt the business. Next.
Okay, sorry, hold this line. I mean the slide. Just wait a minute. Okay, I know that most people, like the way they say business and ethics are a contradiction, and people are not simple beings of self-interest. That's true. But then we can analyze these statements, yeah, that to be profit driven, I would say, is not such a flaw. Okay, business, you enter into business to make profit. To make losses, you don't enter into business. You mean to make profit. So your business, sorry, my internet connection says it's unstable. So it has to be profit driven, all right? But then in the pursuit of profit, Sorry, my internet is not good, so just go ahead. I'll come back to this when you finish.
Okay. Perhaps to clarify on that, by the tagline "profit driven," it primarily means your business should not only be profit driven. Not only it should be profit driven, but not only, because I think the case is that by that point I meant, if you start a business, yes, you want to make profit, but that should not be your only motivating factor. Okay. So, since we are computer scientists, I thought I could explain this point, the stakeholder theory, using game theory, where I'll take an example where you have two companies, two factories basically. So you could imagine you're red or blue. So imagine you're on a road, and both cars have to deliver products to a certain place, and the road is singular and it's perpendicular, and you're at a stop sign. If both of you decide to go, both of you collide and you ruin your products. If one person goes first, they get to deliver first and make profit as compared to you. So the best scenario for this is actually both of you to cooperate. Either one person goes first, or both of you to wait, or something, an argument, having an agreement. So the point of this is that most businesses nowadays tend to try as much to beat their competition in terms of crushing them, and it often leads to having conflicts in terms of their stakeholders. So, for example, going back to my earlier example of Tuskys, once people start taking profit, let's say taking money from the company, they end up hurting the employees who get fired, the community, and losing jobs, and that a whole cycle of negative effects.
Very good. Okay.
Next slide. Yeah. So to counteract the flaws I mentioned, instead of being profit driven, companies need to be value driven. So profit can be value essentially, but also they need to have values in terms of having community values, having employee values, having values that add to the society and the government. They have to have a purpose. Instead of just wanting to make a billion or a million, they need to, for example, they want to change a certain number of lives or employ a certain number of people. And instead of having competition where they just want to destroy other organizations and businesses, they need to have challenges and conflict within their organization. And a good example I would give to illustrate this is this story of our CEO of a battery manufacturing company. And when the new CEO got employed, he went to all manufacturing companies, and he realized that they were there by manufacturing batteries. They led to environmental damages, and he said, if we cannot reduce our carbon emission footprint by 50%, we have to shut it down. So the engineers, of course, said that it can't be done, we'll have to go bankrupt and the company will go down. But after creating this challenge that we either have to have to lower our carbon emission or stop production, the engineers actually came up with a solution that not only cut the carbon emission by 50%, it actually saved them money by an extra 5%. So that's the sort of mentality that stakeholder theory embodies.
Tell me, Daniel, as you are explaining this thing so well, put yourself in a position where you are a CEO or you are, a chairman of the board. These beautiful things, are you saying? Can you envision yourself putting this into effect, into practice?
Yes, I could, because I think there are a lot of companies that I have read about. For example, Netflix, that have this sort of culture where they give their employees freedom and trust, and it actually helps the company do unimaginable things. And I find that when you're an employee of a company working 9 to 5 and you basically have no freedom to grow, you have no other motive apart from just getting money, and you wouldn't go an extra mile to do something great in the company. Yeah, yeah. So I
Okay.
would.
Now you see, I asked that question because we are learning these things, and everything is so theoretical. But it's good to picture yourself, no, as big guys out there, because you are the same ones who are going to go there to be, uh, excellent professionals, and you never know when you watch this, when you read this news in Strathmore, the whatever the weekly roundup news that is there, that they put, and the past students, people who passed through the graduate school, that so and so has been named a CEO and he was a student here in whatever. Okay? So you will actually be, and you can be in these positions, and it's good to remember that there are these good ideas, because you can make a big impact in society by doing a lot of good. You can also impact the society negatively when you do a lot of harm. If you are a past student who became a CEO and this is what you have done to your company, you brought it to ruin, like some of these people we study. I don't know. It just occurred to me, because we may be saying very many beautiful things, but what in the end really happens will be up to you. So it's good to more or less foresee yourself and see whether this can really be applicable or can be applied when I am in that position. Okay, so we have defended the stakeholders theory and the shareholders theory. More or less, we have an idea. There are very good points that were raised there. How business should be ethical. Problem with profit centered, maximizing value for the shareholders. People, as history tells us, people fell into many aberrations, many unethical practices just for profit, to become rich. Well, I don't know, money is not everything. That's why I said, you know, I think it's business ethics, but I don't say that profit is bad, because you have to to make profit when you enter business. But the problem is, how do you make profit? How do you make that profit? So that's the thing. Yeah, you have to practice ethics in the business. It doesn't mean that you will not make money because you are being ethical. There are many ethical companies that make a lot of money at the same time. So then that's now where your ingenuity and your real goodness and creativity will be manifested. Okay, so can we have group 3? They also have interesting report for us, presentation. Moses and John, I don't know the other names. I think I'm not familiar with the other names.
Hello.
Yes, who do I give co-host rights?
Miriam.
Miriam Boga.
Yes.
All right, welcome.
Thank you.
I know group 2 this, group 2.
Yes. So, good afternoon. We are going through shareholders and executive management. And these are our group members. We're 9 of us. So, to start us off, we have Hildegard with shareholders. Hildegard.
Hello.
Yes,
Hello?
you're starting.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I had lost my internet, so I'm back. So you're going to take it to the shareholders and executive management, but by starting with the definition of shareholders, it's almost the same as what they've defined from the other group. But here, what it means is it's just like it's a person or a company or institution that owns at least a certain share of the company's stock, which is also known as the equity. The stock. Sorry. Okay. So what a company's stock means is that it's the security that represents the ownership of the fraction of the corporation. So as shareholders own a certain percentage or a certain part of the company, they reap some benefit from that share, of which these rewards come from a form of the increased stock valuation, which is also which also allows them to sell the shares they initially bought, and also the rewards come from the financial profit, which are called the dividends, of which the dividends are the distribution of a portion of the company's earning, which they are decided by the board of directors. But when the company gets losses, the shareholders won't be able to be paid the dividends, and also it drops the meaning. It drops the shares that the shareholders can sell or buy. So they have to sell their shares by a lower price than the one they bought. Next slide. So the rights and the responsibilities of the shareholders is that the right to inspect the company's books and records, whereby as the company owner, a shareholder has the right to inspect the company's books and records, which serves the purpose of letting the shareholders know how well the company is doing. Also, the power to sue the corporation for misdeeds of its directors or officers, and also the right to vote for the directors that they want to be appointed, and the right to make proposals, and the right to vote for the structural changes. Next slide. And also the other rights, that's the entitlement to receive dividends, of which I've defined earlier, that dividends as a portion of the company's earnings. So the shareholders has the right to receive the dividends, and also the right to attend to the annual general meetings, which are the gatherings of the company's shareholders, whereby the directors of the company present their shareholders with the company's annual report and comment on their performance through the year, of which through this meeting, the shareholders also have the shareholders may elect the new directors and have some few discussions maybe about their ask questions on how the company will move forward or grow, and also the right to transfer ownership, which they can sell or buy their shares in the stock market, and thus that's it. Next, we present of the types of shareholders.
Thank you, Hildegard.
Sorry, what's the name? Hildegard?
Yeah, Hildegard.
Okay. Now, before you go to types of shareholders, I'd like to ask, how does one become a shareholder?
One becomes a shareholder by buying a share on the stock market for that company, buying a certain portion of that stock.
Okay. In what other means? What other ways can one be a shareholder?
Okay, can someone please help me?
Thank you.
Yeah, I can help. Can you hear me?
Yes. Is
Maybe
that
if you look
John?
at no, this is Moses.
Okay.
Maybe if you look at the founders of companies, if you were to found a company, the company grew to a certain extent, and at a point decided to go public. The founders usually still retain a certain amount of shares. So another major of becoming a shareholder is to start a company.
By being what we talked about last time, being a subscriber. They're called subscriber. When you apply for incorporation, remember there is the memorandum of association. So there is a list there where the subscribers to the stocks, no, to the corporation, are listed, and they are corresponding number of shares at the initial, at the beginning of the corporation as they apply for incorporation. So once it is approved, they're actually the first shareholders of the company. They are the, we can call them founding members, or they are the ones who initiate the corporation, and they are called subscribers. So by being a subscriber, they become the first shareholders of the company. And then you buy shares in two ways. You buy from what is called primary market and secondary market. What is a primary market? You invest in shares by, buying shares in the primary market. That is when you buy from the initial public offering. The first time the shares are offered to the public, the shares of a company are offered to the public. It's called primary markets, like it's the first market. So initial public offering is that's IPO that we heard about when we listened to watch that video about stock exchange. They spoke about their IPO. That's initial public offering when the shares are sold for the first time. And then secondary market is now when you buy from other shareholders already, shares that are already in the market. So they resell, their shares. So you can buy through secondary market, or sometimes you can acquire shares when you are given as a gift or you have inherited them. No, I mean it's not secondary market, but that's another way of becoming a shareholder. When in private corporations where it is a closed corporation that they don't sell shares of stock to the public, they just, when the shareholder dies, it is passed on. They inherit the shares they give them to other members of the family. So you can inherit, by will, and then you can receive as a gift, and also you can buy shares from the secondary market, and you invest through the primary market. Okay, sorry, you may continue.
Thank you, Hildegard.
Okay, and by being a subscriber. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Hildegard and Moses. Now we have John.
Hello, I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Okay. So I'll talk about the types of shareholders. So there are two types of shareholders. There's the common shareholder and the preferred shareholder. And the main thing that differentiates these two is the type of stock they own. So there are two types of stock: the common stock and preferred stock. And these two types of stock, they decide, or they give the two types of shareholders different rights. They give them different levels of claim to things like dividends and company assets, and they also give them different ways of benefiting from the corporation. So these differences are the ones that are outlined in these slides. So the first one is that the common shareholders have a right to vote and make decisions. So they're the ones who make decisions on things like who sits in the board of directors, or the company's corporate policy, or structural changes like mergers and acquisitions and liquidation and things like that. On the other side, preferred shareholders don't have a voice in making decisions. And then second difference is in terms of dividends. And dividends, as you've been told, is the money that's given to shareholders. So on the side of common shareholders, dividends they are variable, they're not fixed. So they can be given, so at one time the dividends can be a lot, another time they can be little. And they're not regular. They don't come every month. It's only when the board of directors decides that the common shareholders should be given dividends. And also they're not guaranteed. So it's possible that they never come. But on the side of the preferred shareholders, the dividends are fixed and guaranteed and perpetual. So they know every month of every quarter that they're going to get dividends, and for as long as they are shareholders. And then the third difference or characteristic is common shareholders have a lower claim on dividends. If they have a lower claim on dividends compared to the preferred shareholder. So, for example, if in a month, at one time, the preferred shareholders fail to be paid, the common shareholders can't be paid dividends until the preferred shareholders have been paid their due share of dividends. And also the same is true for company assets during liquidation. If when the company gets liquidated, the common shareholder is usually last in line to get their share back. Usually what happens is first the creditors, the people who give loans, are usually given what is owed to them, then the bondholders, then the preferred shareholders, and then lastly the common shareholders get their share. So first the preferred shareholder, then common shareholder. Then the last difference is that common shareholders tend to gain more in the long term, because the common stock, the value of the common stock appreciates as the company grows and becomes more profitable. However, on the other side, for the preferred shareholders, the preferred stock doesn't appreciate as much as the common stock as the company becomes more profitable. And also some high level differences you can observe from the ones on the slide are that on the side of the preferred shareholders there's more security, because they know they're going to get dividends, for example, say monthly, and they also know that they know they have a greater claim on the company assets. If for example there's a liquidation, so there's more security and less risk on the preferred shareholder side. But on the common shareholder side, there's less security, there's more risk, because they don't get dividends, they're not guaranteed dividends, and they also have a lower claim. They have a lower claim on the company assets in the case of liquidation. So it's possible they don't get any of what they invested into the corporation back in case of liquidation. So, but also on the shareholder side, beside the risk, there's also the advantage of gaining on the fourth difference of characteristic is the advantage of gaining more from the corporation when it succeeds. Yeah, so when you put together the risk and the potential for gain, when you put them together, you now get it makes the common shareholders motivated to want to avoid loss. It motivates them towards avoiding loss and sustainability and consequently liquidation, and pushes them towards motivates them to want profitability and sustainability and growth, because that's when they benefit.
Sorry, John. I don't know. I do not hear you well. But can you explain again here? This preferred stock has limited potential for capital gain. Therefore, preferred shareholders do not gain as much from the corporation's success. How is that when you know that the preferred shareholders are guaranteed of the dividends and of the percentage of asset share upon liquidation? So when there is success, they do not benefit. Can you explain?
Can you hear me well?
Yes, I'm trying to listen more now. I mean, better.
Okay. The preferred stock doesn't appreciate in value as much as the common stock does when a company succeeds. Usually, from what I read, when you sell preferred stock, you usually sell it for about as much as you bought it for. But on the other side, on the side of common stock, it appreciates.
Okay, I understand now. I do. I get. Okay.
Yeah.
That explains it. Yeah. That's why you speak of there's limited potential for capital gain, because then it doesn't benefit from the appreciation of the shares. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
Was I audible? Because
I don't know about the others to me, but it's fine. And so long as the others heard you, it's good. I have no problem, because I know anyway the things that you are saying.
Okay. Yeah, then I think I'm done. If the others heard me.
Okay. What about the majority and minority? Is someone going to explain that? Okay.
Yes. Thank you, John. So I will be taking you through majority and minority shareholders. So for majority shareholders, they own 50% or more of the percentage of like the shares that are sold. And then the minority shareholders, they own less than 50%. So let's say that today you walk into maybe Centum Investments and you want to buy shares. I'd say maybe you'd give them like shares of about 100,000 or 50,000. That will give you like a small percentage of probably 1% or at most 1.5 or 2%, which that makes you a minority shareholder. And then for the majority and minority shareholders, a lot of these institutions or companies that list their shares on maybe the securities to probably have foreign corporates who are shareholders, they're local corporates, and then there are maybe foreign individuals and local individuals. So shareholders could be another corporate itself investing in this company, or individuals, both local or foreign, investing in a given company. And then, so as a shareholder, we'd like to think of you as an investor. And for investors have the mindset that money works for them. So as such, where in the world, so if a financial institution is left on its own, let's say like Safaricom is left on its own to sell shares as they wish, some people will become malicious and maybe sell shares that have already been sold to other people. In the same case, imagine going to a bank like KCB to withdraw money, and then you're sent back and you're told there's no money to withdraw. That would be bad, because there's a rule that for every day as a bank closes its door, it should have a minimum amount of money in it. So let's say like 3 billion. The same way for M-Pesa. Every M-Pesa business at the end of the day will have like a set amount, like maybe 30,000 in float and in cash as a business. So to curb this, every country in the world has a financial regulatory body to monitor these financial institutions. So from this slide, you can see we've highlighted a few countries. So, but the key one we'd want to look at is Kenya. So Kenya is regulated by the Capital Markets Authority. That you indulge in business with in the matters of shares and such. As such, so capital markets, I'd like to explain that. So capital is what you start a business with, and markets is where the sales occur. So when selling entities, you are selling capital basically. And so shares are set in such a way that they are exchanged in capital markets. So for this, the aspect of a majority and minority shareholder, someone mentioned rights, voting rights. So if as you understood, a majority shareholder has 50% stake, so that means they'll have more voting rights. And this could be at a disadvantage of the minority shareholders. So such, these regulatory bodies in the different, in a country, but there can be more than one regulatory body. So these regulatory bodies, they help to protect minority shareholders. So because of like the voting rights could disadvantage them. So for the CMA in Kenya, they protect minority shareholders through legislation. This could be like regulating the percentage of controlling interests of certain shareholders. Because let's say a shareholder has 75% controlling interest. That means any decision that is made, they have 75% of 75% voting stakes. That means they would influence. Thank you. So they would of course influence the decision to be made. Another thing is company policies. So there should be a minimum quorum for an AGM to be held. You can't have two people and hold an AGM for something like Safaricom. So there needs to be a minimum quorum for the people who have attended for the AGM to be held, because at times at AGMs, the decisions to be made are put to be voted in. And then another thing is the terms of the executive management. We'll cover executive management in the coming slides. So the terms of office. So how long should a CEO serve in this company? And after that, the ways that the elections will be held, or how long a board should serve. So such things. Another thing is regulating the businesses that a company engages in. With the CMA, companies are not allowed. Companies are forbidden from engaging in illegal activities. So because that will incriminate the company itself, and thus in the long run, it could hurt everybody who has invested in this company. Things to be regulated could be something like there's something that is called private placements. So normally, when a company wants to sell shares, they list them on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. So private placements mean shares might be listed on the Securities Exchange, but then they're not sold there. They're sold privately. So like Safaricom sells its shares among its employees or people close to them. This could be as a way to control who has shares, because in a malicious setting, Safaricom will be selling its shares and Airtel will buy like a huge chunk of shares. That means Airtel would have controlling power on decisions made in Safaricom. So that's a thing that private placement helps to do. So with this, CMA will ensure that not all shares are sold under private placements. So to ensure also transparency in the case of like what businesses that this company is doing. So another way that the CMA will protect minority shareholders is through suspending or cancelling listing of securities on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. So let's take in point a company that is undergoing liquidation, or maybe a company like a limiter like Tuskys, which is having battles right now. So it will warn you against investing in such a company because you might lose. Another thing is CMA publishes embezzlement by officials of these companies. So if a company, the directors are doing illegal businesses or they're using their funds wrongly, they will publish this so investors will know what these officials are doing in this given company. Another thing that CMA does, it licenses stockbrokers, dealers, and investment advisors. So someone cannot just wake up today and tell you, "Oh, hi, John, kindly come and invest in this company. I know what they are doing. I can explain to you the returns that they gave their shareholders last year." They can't do that. You have to be licensed to do that. So these are ways of protecting minority shareholders because it is made there's an assumption that a lot of minority shareholders might not have the legal capabilities to battle most of these huge companies. So a regulatory body stands in the way to protect these people and ensure that the financial institutions work under regulated nations. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, I didn't get your name.
Miriam.
Miriam. Bulga, okay.
Yes. So thank you. Next we will have Lorna. No, Moses, sorry, we'll have Moses.
Yeah, so can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so we're covering shareholder activism. So from the word shareholder activism, we come up with an activist shareholder. And you can see that an activist shareholder is any shareholder who uses his or her equity to affect some of the decisions or policies that the company has come up with. And we found out that an equity of about 10% can be more than enough to affect a certain decision or to launch a successful campaign. Some of the issues that an activist shareholder can be interested in raising are number one, social issues. Social issues can occur whereby, let's say the company is a construction company. A lot of construction companies are actually not quite following procedures for protecting their workers in terms of providing them with personal equipment. So an activist shareholder can raise a campaign for the company to provide protective equipment for their employees. Another issue can be leadership issues, whereby the directors and managers of the company are not really performing well, and in a sense have turned to agents and are now mainly concerned with their own benefit. In that case, an activist shareholder can raise a campaign to remove the directors from their position. Another issue is such as environmental issues. Environmental issues can occur, let's say, for example, we've seen a lot of companies dumping waste in rivers. And this usually results in rivers such as Nairobi River today being we can't really classify it as a river. It's too polluted. That's just one example of an environmental issue. An activist shareholder can raise a campaign to force the company to find alternative methods of dumping their waste instead of dumping it into rivers. And finally, we can talk about profit distribution. Profit distribution can occur in the form of dividends. And we've seen the two types of shares, the common and the preferred. And they don't quite receive the same amount of dividends. if an activist shareholder feels that the differences are quite far apart, whereby one is benefiting majorly and the other shareholder is losing, person can also raise that campaign to handle that issue and come up with a solution. Next slide, please. So here we look at the different forms of shareholder activism that can occur. Some of them are shareholder resolution, litigation, proxy fights, publicity campaigns, and negotiations with management. Let's try to explain what they're about. Next slide, please. So let's first of all look at litigation threats. Litigation is basically the same as being sued. This occurs whereby a company has been sued for some of its practices. The same, let's say dumping waste in a river. So an activist shareholder can actually sue the company after trying other means, and those previous means have failed, whereby the person will find an attorney and take the company to court. However, this method is not really desired, as it might create a negative image about the company. The other one is negotiations with management. Negotiations can basically take place during the annual general meeting, during when individual shareholders are given opportunities to raise their concerns and also their suggestions. Hopefully, during such talks, some of their suggestions can be put in place. So, yeah, that might work. Another method is publicity campaigns. Publicity campaigns is whereby the activist shareholder can put pressure on the company through use of the media, which can be social media or other forms of media. Let's take an example of when Kenya Airways was trying to place a bid to take over JKIA. There was really a lot of publicity campaigns against that move. And if you remember, the move actually failed. So publicity campaigns are an effective method. The other method is shareholder resolution. Shareholder resolution can occur whereby different shareholders can combine their shares, their views, and take their views as their views, in case, let's say, it was a similar view, something like the issue of providing protection to employees. If that view was raised by different shareholders who have come together, they can all of them take the view to the company, which will actually be considered. And the final one is proxy fights. What a proxy fight is that during votes, what happens is that a specific shareholder might not be able to vote due to various reasons, not being able to attend the meeting or just not wanting to vote. So what happens during proxy fights? It's possible to transfer your voting rights to another shareholder who will vote on your behalf. The different shareholder will use that voting right which you have transferred to him or her to vote for a certain change, which might have been ejecting a certain director or something like that. That's it.
Thank you, Moses. Are there any questions? Okay, we'll proceed to executive management. And to start us off, we have Lorna.
Okay, I'm Lorna and I'm going to take you through CEO duties and responsibility. So, a CEO's roles vary from one company to another depending on the company's size, culture, and corporate structure. So the CEO, some of the duties and responsibilities of a CEO are communicating on behalf of the company with shareholders, government entities, and the public, and leading the development of the company's short-term and long-term strategies. And the CEO is also a leader because he advises the board, advocates organization and stakeholder changes related to the organization mission. Another one of the duties and responsibilities of a CEO is creating and implementing the company or organization's vision and mission. So he's a visionary such that he ensures staff and the board have sufficient and up-to-date information. And he or she also evaluates the work of other executive leaders within the company. This includes the CFO or the COO, and he or she also ensures that the company maintains high social responsibility wherever it does business. And to add on that, he ensures that the organization and its mission, programs, products, and services are consistently presented in strong, positive image to the relevant stakeholders. He or she also assesses risks to the company and ensures they are monitored and minimized, so as to avoid potential losses to the company and also to its image. Lastly, he sets strategic goals and makes sure they are measurable and describable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lorna. So next we have Joanne.
So I'm going to take you through CEO duality. Duality role in a company means a person who has dual role as a chairman of board and chief executive officer at the same time. The role of the chairman of board are different to the roles of the CEO, but in CEO duality, the person is supposed to carry out these roles simultaneously. Next slide. So some of the advantages of CEO duality is clear direction as a leader, and as a BOD who also serves as a CEO, certainly has enormous power within a company. Hence, there is clear direction as a leader. This will provide clear direction from the CEO to the managers, stakeholders, and their subordinates regarding the strategies and business decisions that exist within the company. So for efficiency and effectiveness, efficiency means that the company does not need to spend more money to hire CEOs from outside. So this will provide efficiency for the company in minimizing their expenses. And for the effectiveness means that substantial power as the BOD and CEO will provide effectiveness of the company in making decisions to reach goals of the company, and this will not require a long process in decision making, hence saving time. So some of the disadvantages of CEO duality is segregation of duty. So strong power in the CEO duality is good because it can create clear direction, but on the other hand, it's a disadvantage because if a person has enormous power within a company, then it will create segregation of duty and lack of transparency. Because of the strong power possessed by the CEO, duality provides an opportunity to hide whatever is in the company, which could result in lack of transparency within the company. Yes. Next slide.
Thank you, Joanne. Now we'll have Emmanuel.
Okay, I'll be talking about field compensation and some of the incentives that we have entitled to. First, you'll find that the executive pay is usually biased towards their rewards for actual results. This is in terms of they are rewarded according to what they have done to the company, and their pay is usually inversely proportional to the company's success. That's that if the company underperforms, find that their pay reduces, and when the company performs well, their pay increases. Next slide. So we have 6 components that constitute of the executive pay. These are the base salary, performance-based annual incentives, long-term incentives, benefits, executive perquisites, and contingent payments. So we'll start off with the base salary. So the base salary is usually stated as an accumulation of the annual salary, which is usually broken down on a monthly basis or bi-weekly. Bi-weekly means just like after 2 weeks. And different executives receive different payments, which depends on the company's policies and the industry which the company operates in. Next slide. You have performance-based annual incentives. So this incentive is usually given to an executive when they achieve a number of goals which are specified to them by the board of directors. These objectives can include things such as improving profit margins, increasing the revenue of the company, implementing a new corporate strategy, developing a new product, or expanding to a new market. So when an executive achieves any of these objectives, as stated to them by the company board of directors, they are actually given this incentive. Next, we have performance-based long-term incentive. So this incentive is usually given to the executive when they achieve the long-term goal of the company. This is usually like in 10 years or 5 years. And they are usually given in stock basis, and they may include stock options, restricted stock, or performance-based stock. Next. So the next component is benefits. These include statutory benefits such as their social security, unemployment insurance, Medicare, and workers' compensation. Also, we find that executives usually participate in other company benefits such as vacation, holidays, sick days, severance pays, life insurance, and medical insurance. So they also receive the benefits given to normal employees because to some extent executives are also normal employees to the company and are also eligible to participate in special retirement plans. These retirement plans will include like being given a house and the company putting the rent for the house. Next, we have executive perquisites. Perquisites, you can picture them just as perks or things given to motivate them for their value on time with the company. And they are structured to value the executive of the company through their time or unique conditions which show that they actually brought a lot of benefits to the company by being in the company. And some of these perquisites are structured to maximize the executive work time. So in order to like reduce the amount of time spent doing other stuff and to maximize the amount of time they spend on the company. This can include such as being given drivers or chauffeurs, being given home communication systems, financial planning systems, security, or the use of the company means of transport such as planes or vehicles. Next. And finally, we have contingent payments. And these are payments usually given to executives in case there is involuntary termination of their employment. And these contingent payments are usually included in their employment agreements, who are hired from outside the company in order to encourage them not to leave, in order to encourage them to leave their previous employer in case the new arrangement soars. Under the contingent payments, you also have change in control agreements, which are also known as golden parachutes, which are structured to compensate executives in case they lose their jobs while working for the company. They can lose their jobs, for example, when the company they are working for is placed under a merger, and say if they are a COO and their position is no longer valid because the other company that has absorbed them maybe already has a COO, and so this other COO might lose their position. So they are usually paid using the golden parachutes. I'll invite the next presenter to continue.
Okay, thank you so much, Emmanuel. And next we'll have Rebecca with regulation of compensation.
So I'll be taking you through regulation of compensation. In short, there have been a lot of new laws that have been passed to help grievances to do with unfair compensation laws, where you find executives are earning too much compensation as opposed to like other employees, as well as opposed to even sometimes you find they earn more than the profits that the company is making. And that's when you find situations such as movements like Occupy Wall Street, when whole like when the economy is crashing, yet the executive compensations are still very high. It feels quite unfair. So next slide. So essentially, there have been laws put through to try and govern and regulate compensation by creation of things like compensation tax shelters and certain things that have essentially avoided helping to avoid executives to get loopholes to get more money, in short. Yes, and then the next slide. So some of these examples include, extending the vesting period of executive stock and options. Essentially, current vesting periods can be short, which encourages the managers to inflate short-term stock prices at the expense of long-term value, since they can sell essentially their holdings before a decline happens. So to avoid that, there's been an extended vesting period of executive stocks and options in some countries. And then in addition to that, there is disclosure of salaries, so that the stakeholders can know whether or not they think that remuneration is fair. Stakeholders being like the board of directors, and there are also institutional intermediaries that must all vote in the interest of the beneficiaries and the banks. And sometimes the shareholders are minority shareholders, like ordinary people. So to avoid them like getting a rip-off, disclosure of salaries is a first step. Next slide. And then in addition to that, there's a say on pay, which is an unbinding vote of the general meeting to essentially approve pay packages, like because sometimes pay comes as a package, like you get maybe travel benefits, medical benefits, etc. So the aim is essentially to signal to boards not to raise salaries beyond reasonable levels. And in this meeting, most shareholders in most countries essentially can get to vote on the compensation that will occur. And then something else is also a bonus malus, where executives carry downside risks in addition to potential upside rewards. So they have the incentive to take the system to go up instead of going down, because if it goes down, they're going to bear the brunt of that. They're going to also suffer. The stocks are going to suffer. And then there's also progressive taxation, which is essentially more taxes for higher tax rates for people who earn more money, which is a bit more equitable. Then also there's a maximum wage, which you give like a maximum, for the financial assistance that can be accrued from taxpayers. This has been enacted, for instance, in the United States. So it's the argument is to place a cap on the amount that any person may legally make. In the same way, there's a minimum wage, so people don't earn too little. Then there's also debt-like compensation. If an executive is compensated exclusively with equity, he'll take the benefits. He'll take risks to benefit the shareholders at the expense of the debt holders. So essentially, this tries and counters that. There's also indexing operation performance, which is a way to make bonus targets business cycle independent. So it's not, the bonuses don't come with a certain business cycle, they're independent of that. So sometimes they can be put at longer periods of time. For instance, if a business cycle is a year or 6 months, they don't have to have a bonus every single 6 months or every single year. That way it creates more spacing in between bonuses. Next slide, please. And also in Australia, there's two strikes, which is essentially an amendment put in place to essentially trigger the election of a board where 25% no by the shareholders who sit like on the board essentially means that there has to be an overhaul in the re-election of the board, because this is to curb like things like favoritism or corruption within the board, essentially that. So the vote must be upheld by at least 50%, which is majority on the re-election process to be run. And then at the spill meeting, all directors at the time have to stand for re-election. So it's for everyone. Everyone can be overhauled. And then in addition to that, there's independent non-executive director setting compensation. So you get someone who is independent to actually set the compensation as opposed to someone who is in the organization. And there's also been some countries like Israel setting upper bounds to executive compensation in these firms. So for instance, according to the law, an annual executive compensation more than what is about $600,000 can't be granted by a financial corporation if it's more than 35 times the lowest salary paid by the corporation, which is really good because it helps curb the inequality between the employees and the executive management. Really tries to bridge the gap. Yes. Any questions?
No, thank you. That was good. Mhm.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. So now for the CEO, we have Helen.
So I'll be discussing on CEO succession. It involves steps taken to decide who can replace the CEO once he or she leaves the company. It's normally performed by the board of directors, and it can have a positive or negative effect. Successful companies manage this process well in advance by setting up a CEO succession plan. Some of the benefits of a succession plan are it sets the company up for sound leadership on a continual basis. It also gives the current CEO an opportunity to adjust his or her actions in light of the changing business conditions. It's cost effective in that fewer financial resources will be spent in the external search and development of candidates. It also helps the company plan for the long term. Next slide. A CEO succession planning list includes the following. The first one is to establish the foundation. This determines which committee is best suited to the task. It can be the governance committee, which assists the board in matters affecting the company, or the compensation committee, which oversees the company's
Yeah, knowing what
benefits.
you really want to do is
Next
hard
is to
because
create a
before
written
you turn
succession plan,
25, you probably think you want
which
to do
details how
beatboxing.
company officers
Life
are elected
experience
and
is kind of like
replaced,
a
including how the committee should go about choosing successors. Determine the requirements. The committee should determine the requirements of the position they are filling. Next is to conduct in-depth reviews. This is done by assessing the internal candidate skills and seeing if they match with the requirements. Then the committee compares the list of capabilities with the company's senior talent pipeline. They narrow the list to the final candidates. The full board has an opportunity to conduct focused
my
interviews and
car
make
is
a
an
final
appreciating
decision on who
asset.
will be elected as the
Oh
CEO of the
yes,
company.
my home
And last but
continues
not
to
least,
grow in
it
value.
implements the plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen. So we came up with practice questions, and Moses will take you through these questions. Moses.
Yeah. So the first question has been answered by both groups. So what's the difference between a shareholder and a stakeholder? However, I don't know if anybody could clarify. Any volunteer?
I went to Malaysia to get some golfing with T-Ski, J-Mac, Brian, and a subscriber, Yon. In a surprise move, we went to the Elks Club.
Come on, please help. You need to be active participants. Try and answer the questions.
Judith,
At the Elks
what if we go just the two of us to
Any
replace
volunteer who could clarify what's the difference between a shareholder and a stakeholder?
Papa really doesn't want mom to go, and mom still insists there has to be a sibling rep because you know
Rebecca's put up her hand.
Yeah, Rebecca, go ahead.
We can go then.
I'll
I
suggest
can
it.
just try. But shareholders are always holders, but then stakeholders are not always shareholders, because shareholders own shares, which are like essentially part of the corporation or organization, etc. While stakeholders has an interest in the performance of the company, for reasons like that are not to do with stock performance or appreciation or the money going up. For instance, maybe let's say in a school, perhaps the parents are not necessarily shareholders, but they're stakeholders since their children are going to that school and they want their children to succeed.
The Elks Club, there's a room. Very course.
Yeah, Rebecca is right about that. So the major difference comes about at just one point, whereby shareholders actually own equity in the company. However, a stakeholder, we can say somebody who is affected by the performance of the company. In that case, a shareholder can be a customer, a supplier, anybody who will be affected by how the
Stakeholder,
company
you mean?
performs. A stakeholder, sorry. And therefore, with that definition, I want to ask question 2.
All the way down left.
Moses,
Yeah.
could you kindly read the comments in the chat? Thank you.
VJ has given us a
So,
bailout, but then
comment
you're
number
pitching
1,
toward the water.
2. Wow. A shareholder is a person or institution who holds shares or stock in an organization, while a stakeholder is a person or party that has an active role in the company's project.
Continue to use it on quick
Second from Diana. Shareholders are focused more on the stakes of the company, while shareholders are interested in the performance of the company as it affects them directly.
Yo, what's going
Take
on,
their
guys?
stakeholders.
So the
And finally,
CPS
a shareholder owns part of the public company through shares or stock, while a stakeholder has interest in the performance of the company for reasons other than stock performance or appreciation. As we said earlier, people like customers, people like suppliers can fall in the stakeholder category. Now, with that, let's look at question 2. In your opinion, should a company strive to maximize shareholder value or try to serve the interests of all stakeholders? And anybody provide us with their opinion on that?
I'm like 28 now. Yeah.
Amy,
Go ahead.
from your explanation, I'd like to understand this question means when you maximize shareholder value. So shareholder value means what they get, returns that they get at the end of a financial year. So if this year they get maybe at like 5 shillings from each stock, next year maximizing means you add to that. So maybe next year they get 7 shillings. And then the second part is trying to serve the interests of all stakeholders. As you've said, shareholders are part of stakeholders. So stakeholders could be the shareholders themselves, the employees, the suppliers, and the customers. I'd like to think the second part means if the second opinion will be that you serve the interest of everyone else, not just one particular group, but everyone else who has a stake or an interest in that given company. So, in my opinion, I'd like to try and serve the interest of all stakeholders.
Okay, thank you very much for that opinion. Let's look at this chart. Sorry, this chart. So we have comment from Julie. He says, have a balance of the two. Then from Vanessa, she says, I think it should maximize stakeholder interest, which will ultimately maximize shareholder value. So she's looking at it in the interest of starting with a stakeholder, which will trickle down to a shareholder. Yeah, okay, those are two opinions. Then the major issue with this question is that we have two people who are the shareholders and the stakeholders. Let's look at shareholders as the people who will be pumping money for in your corporation, money which you use to grow. So if you don't actually serve their interest in terms of increasing the stock, as you said, you'll find a situation whereby your stock is basically not selling, because who will want to buy stock in a company whereby the person will not be able to sell stocks at higher returns? So you'll find a situation whereby your stocks are not selling, therefore you lose in terms of the shareholders. And again, if you look at the stakeholders, if you were to focus on the shareholders and ignore the stakeholders, such as your employees, your customers, you'd find that the performance of your company, you would notice a decline, whether it will be rapid or slow. In terms of, let's look at the employees. If the employees have no increment in salaries and they've worked in your company for many years, most likely they find themselves in a situation they want to move to other companies. Again, if your suppliers find themselves in a situation whereby they are not getting paid or the payments are being delayed, they'll most likely not want to do business with you. So for this question, it's most advisable to focus on both, to try to find a balance on both and not be biased on one, because if you be biased on one, you'll always lose a lot on the other side. So Miriam, are you okay with that?
Yes, I am. But so
Hello?
no, my bad.
Okay, Miriam seems to have issues to back. So that's a major concern, whereby you have to create a balance for both. And finally, I wanted to ask, assuming you have bought shares at Centum Investment in the 2020/2021 financial year, outline questions and concerns that you will raise as a shareholder in an annual general meeting, which will be scheduled for 25th November 2020. maybe some of us can state what issues they would like to raise in such a company in an annual general meeting. Anybody? Maybe our lecturer Juvie can maybe state an issue she would like to raise such a company if she was a shareholder.
Here it says, okay, implication to COVID-19 to the share price and market according to Vanessa. Well, I would like to find out, for example, can be different things. The financial report, the interim financial report, probably. And let's say, I don't know, if that financial period ends in December, maybe they have mid-year. There may be some things that have come up, several issues that have come up in the course of the year that the shareholder needs to be informed. Other emergency issues, maybe the business is losing out or they need to sell, they need to increase capital. Other relevant issues that we need to be updated about. That could be. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, those some of the issues that will be raised.
I mean, there are many things that you can list. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to my group members and to everyone who has contributed to the discussion in the chat section. So with that, I'd like to say that we are done. And if there are any questions, please feel free to share with us. Thank you.
Sorry, I would like to thank you very much. What's your name? Group 2. Yeah. That was very good. Okay. I think done a good research. But just hang on. Okay. Sorry, I don't know if I want to. Okay, sorry. Shareholders. Yeah, I'm just trying to see what other relevant things, relevant information between report. I think I already said that. Related audited reports, changes in the statement, satisfying the meeting of the conditions for enlisting, can they continue? Other things that some how do you say, some notes on the statement, compliance issues, those are the things that you can bring up in the meeting, or some matters arising. Director resignation, there might be those things, different things. Acquisition of assets, the need to raise more capitals. Okay, many things. All right, I was going to share my screen, but I think it's not necessary. Okay, so thank you very much. Now what happens is that for the next class, now I'm going to share this. Hang on, let's have a few more minutes before you sign out. So for the next class, we will have group 3, board of directors, and I think Cadbury report and UK combined code will need to be ready, at least 3 groups. so that we feel we have the time. And these people, Group 6, when you report the newest Sarbanes-Oxley Act, you can also tell us more about Enron, the case of Enron, because I think it's one of the reasons why they made this act. It's just a regulation on the US on corporate governance. So anyway, you are many, so you can actually look at the whole thing. Otherwise, you can put the highlights. It's up to you. Yeah. I like the research of what do you call Group 2, for example. I think they've done a very good research. So yeah, you may get the full document. Don't just look for the summaries. Look at the document and then get all the important highlights of the document. Then we are going to see, as we move on to the different codes, we are going to compare and highlight the essential points that they have brought up as part of the development, as building up on other codes, on the previous codes, or the codes in other countries. Because Cadbury actually is the first English code. It should form part of the combined code, but it's a code on its own because it's the very first one. Actually, the first one all around the world. Governance code. Okay, so I think those three. But basically, if I would suggest that all the groups should, start working on theirs, because we are just going to continue. It might be pretty fast, but I encourage discussions. Questions, because the more we discuss, I think the more we learn. And I like this because when you do your own research, this is actually active learning. No? That I can be telling you these things, but when you study yourselves, you become an expert in that particular topic because of the research that you have done personally. Otherwise, thank you very much, Group 2. We'll see you next week. You can just sign out with an idea that you have, one concept that you have learned in the class today.